Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Alrighty, I'm back with another story for you fine folks. This time we'll start with the crazy lady who caused a scene over a moose sculpture in a gift shop. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Go check your moose section. I work in Yellowstone National Park. In this most recent summer, I worked in the gift shop. On this particular day, it was peak season, guests flowing in from every direction, and I was in the bigger of our two stores with an incompetent coworker. I left my register during a small dip in speed just to run and grab any unfolded shirts to take back to the register. In those 5 seconds of speed walking around the store, a line formed and my coworker was taking his sweet time dealing with it. So I start calling guests over to check them out, and the line isn't going down, but of course during this rush, I get an aggressive guest, LMAO. Cast, me, Moose Lady, ML. ML. Yesterday, I saw a sculpture of a moose and didn't get it, and now I don't see it. Can you check in the back and see if you still have one? Me. Yes, but I need to get this line under control before I can go down. Is it okay if you wait a couple minutes? ML. No! You said you could help the next guest, and I am the next guest. Now get me a moose. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am. I wasn't here yesterday and didn't see the moose, so I'm not even sure what the moose looked like. My coworker's new, and I can't leave him alone in this rush. I'll go down as soon as I can. ML. I clap, am clap, the clap, next clap, guest clap. Now go look in your moose section and find the sculpture. Now at this point, the rush had died down, and I knew I didn't have a moose sculpture. The last time we got a shipment was my Friday, and I did shipment, ain't no moose. If moose sculpture had come in, it would have been a return from another village in the park, and if it was already gone, she was SOL. I let her know that I'll run down and see, grab the keys and my vape, go down to the basement stockroom, do a quick lap around the stockroom, no effing moose of course, and spend a solid 3 minutes chain vaping doing a thorough check of the stockroom for any moose. Me. Sorry, ma'am, couldn't find it. Must have been the only one in stock. ML. You're such a effing idiot. I can't believe you don't have a sculpture of a moose. She storms out yelling that she'll call the NPS on me. She came back the next day and made one of my sweetest coworkers ever cry by telling her how pretty she'd be if she just washed her face. Coworker had chronic severe acne. Overall, a terrible lady, and I'm glad that where I live, you don't see the same people more than a couple of times. She seems like the type that deserves to get banned from national parks. And our second story. Beep, beep, under the bus you go. Okay, this is a tale that was related to me by a friend of mine, Bob. Bob was a back-of-store lead hand for a retail store. Along with his colleague Larry, he made sure that shipments and deliveries were scheduled and handled correctly, and the crew out back were doing their jobs, and that the restocks for front of store were picked correctly. His assistant manager, AM, Frank, had resigned, and Bob had applied for the job. Bob had been handling many of Frank's duties, particularly those that involved computers, since Frank was older and not very adept with a keyboard and mouse. Bob didn't get the job. Instead, they brought in Richard, an AM from another store. And Bob had worked with him in the past. He was a jerk and had once thrown Bob under the bus for one of his own mistakes, causing Bob to get yelled at on the floor in front of his colleagues, then hauled into the manager's office to get written up. Bob was thinking of quitting anyway, but getting turned down for the AM position and then seeing Richard roll in, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. One thing that's pertinent is that Larry, his colleague, was a Harley-riding biker type. He wasn't a member of a club, but enjoyed riding and did charity rides and stuff like that. He also, every year for a decade, went to Sturgis, South Dakota for the annual rally in August. So Bob decided to submit his resignation, effective the day after Larry left for his trip. He did this by attaching a PDF of his resignation to a bunch of reports and requested a red receipt. Bingo! Richard clicked red and Bob printed it out. The schedule for the warehouse crew was posted online on a web-based scheduling app and the admin account under assistantmanager@store.com. This was store policy. All emails were created as job title @ and when a person left the position, the password was changed. This way, nobody had to change their contact information. They were communicating with the job title and not the individual. IT had a list of logins for every position and changed passwords with every transition so the outgoing person couldn't sabotage things. Bob had asked Richard repeatedly for his password to the scheduling site and never got an answer. So Larry worked a Thursday and headed out. Bob worked Friday, his last day, and before he left, he told his crew to make certain they checked the scheduling app and worked their scheduled hours. Then he went home and shut off his work phone. On the Monday before opening, he showed up to turn in his phone and keys to be greeted by Richard losing his crap. The store manager corralled both of them and took them into his office. Richard went on a tear, describing the crap show that happened over the weekend, how Bob was incommunicado. Richard had to come in and pee on fires and demanded that Bob be written up. Bob let him go on and on. The store manager said, "Bob, what have you got to say about this?" "Well, a write-up is a disciplinary action for an employee, right?" "Yes. It's going to be hard to make that stick since I'm not an employee." Bob had a folder and pulled out a printed copy of his resignation showing that the previous Friday was his last day. The store manager read it, then handed it to Richard. Richard said, You never sent this to me." "Yes, I did 3 weeks ago. Here's a copy of the email, and here's a copy of the red receipt." The store manager gave Richard a wilting stare. "So who have you got lined up to replace Bob? Have you been interviewing?" "I didn't get this email. This is fake." "No, I haven't been interviewing anyone." "I guess Larry will have to cover until I can fill that position." Bob: "Yeah, good luck with that. Larry isn't even in this time zone. He's in Sturgis." "No, it's not fake. If you want, IT can verify that by checking your email history." Richard turned white. He'd realized he had no supervisors for the dock at all. The store manager asked Bob, "Is there any way we can get you to stick around?" "No thanks, I've already lined up a new job, sorry. But you've got bigger problems than this." SM: "Like what?" Bob pulled out more copies of emails and handed them over. "I asked Richard repeatedly for his password to the scheduling app, several times. Can I jump on your computer for a second?" SM turned his laptop to face Bob, and Bob logged into the scheduling app. "Okay, so the admin account is under Richard's job title. This is where we post the schedule for the crew. I used to do it for Frank because he wasn't a computer guy, but technically this falls under the assistant manager role. The login is assistant manager @ I'm logged in under my own account, but I can still see who's scheduled across the board. I just can't edit it. I don't have the permissions. Here's the schedule for the warehouse crew for the next 2 weeks." He turned the laptop back around. It's blank. There isn't anyone scheduled to work. At all. Bob turned to Richard. "Here's my keys, and here's my company phone. I'm done. By the way, in accordance with this email from IT, I've factory reset the phone. Good luck." Bob left the office, and all the way out of the store, he could hear the manager yelling at Richard. Apparently, Richard had to go into the personnel file and burn up the phone lines, calling warehouse guys to come in at the last minute, and company policy was that if you were called in with less than 24 hours notice, it was time and a half. Many of the records were outdated, so if he reached a worker, he had to ask them if he had any of their co-workers' numbers. Once he got things straightened out a bit, he was shown the door. They brought a lead hand and an assistant manager in from another store. Richard was fired for cause, denying him unemployment and tagging him with a "do not rehire." Karma. It can and many times will either A, bite you in the butt, or B, blow up in your face, or C, all of the above. And our last story. Entitled Mom Attempts to Break Onto Navy Pier. So backstory. I'm in the Navy, and a few years ago I was stationed on a ship. As part of my duties, I would occasionally have to stand as an armed guard at the entrance to the piers where the ships were docked. One Saturday evening, I'm standing guard, and for the first few hours everything's going fine. A few pizza delivery drivers, a few totally not drunk sailors. Yes, it's a stereotype, but it's true. Typical evening. And then my quiet watch came to a screeching halt. The entitled mom came up to the gate and I asked to see her ID, and the following conversation ensues. For the sake of security, certain details are being left out. EM gives a very loud huff and pulls out her driver's license. My son is on the ship. Me. All right, ma'am. Is he coming to get you? EM. No. Why? Me. I can't let you onto the pier without proper identification or an escort. EM. But I showed you my license. Me. Ma'am, in order to come onto the pier by yourself, you need a military ID or a temporary pass. Since you don't have either of those, then you'll need your son to come down from the ship and escort you on board. While I was talking with the EM, another person came up with her military ID in hand, and I attempted to let her through. EM, practically yelling, I was here first, you SLT! Me. Ma'am, that's uncalled for. EM. What are you gonna do about it, you effing World War II German soldier analog starts with an N? Me, using every ounce of mental strength to not yell at EM. Ma'am, step away from the gate. EM. No, I'm going to see my son. And proceeds to attempt to push past me. I pulled my can of OC spray off my belt, move in front of EM, and now forcefully commanding, Ma'am, this is your last warning. Step away from the gate or you will be sprayed. For those of you who don't know what OC spray is, it's oleoresin capsicum. Think of it as mace and pepper spray's evil cousin, and it hurts like hell. EM makes one more step towards the gate. F you, you not! I spray EM right in the face, toss the can away, and tackle her to the ground and handcuff her. All the while, she's yelling every obscenity in the book. She would have made a Civil War-era sailor blush. Threatening to sue us, I know your boss, I'll get the president to get you fired. Which, personally, I would have loved to have seen. Yada yada, typical Karen threats with no effect. All while this is going on, the other guard who was with me had called for the watch supervisor, and the girl who I was going to let through had called the base police. A few minutes later, 2 squad cars rolled up, one of which was the county sheriff, an ambulance, and a watch supervisor. The medic started treating her OC contamination, and when they cut the cuffs off, they were flex cuffs, she punched 2 of them and wiped OC onto the 3rd. The base cop ran over and cuffed her with real cuffs now. I recount the encounter to the sheriff and the watch supervisor. The other guard and the girl do the same, and EM was arrested for trespassing on government property by X2, failure to follow the instructions of military police, resisting arrest, and assaulting an EMT X3. The best part was, her son's ship pulled into port 2 days later. Now we know why her kid joined the Navy. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.